Hello and welcome to our IG Live. Today we are going to be talking to Kiyanda and Ben Young. They're the authors of the Twin Powers book series. Hello, I see one just joined. We're going to books which were inspired by their own twins and talking about how they went from they're both doctors, what their transition was like to becoming authors. Actually, I see them both on here. Just a minute. See, it's the Twin Powers book, and there's actually the second book in their series is also out, and it's all about celebrating the special bond that twins have. They have two twins themselves that inspired the book. All right, hold on, just to both of you that are joining, I sent invitations to join. If that doesn't work, maybe you could send a request if the invitations aren't going through. So we're talking again, that's about celebrating, there we go, the special bond that twins have. Okay, sorry, we're just getting everything set up here. It'll take a minute. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good. As you can see, I'm in my car.
Are
I'm just
you
trying to
able to
make a way
turn
today.
your phone a little?
Yeah, sure.
And for some reason, it looks like Kiyanda, I got something saying she wasn't able to join. Hopefully we'll get that worked out soon.
Okay. Looks
Here you
okay. There
are.
we go.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I was just giving a little background about you guys, but why don't you go ahead and maybe you can introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your book series.
Sure.
Sure. So you want to go first, Kiyanda?
Sure. So I'm Kiyanda Baldwin Young, and my husband is Benjamin Young. We have obviously two twins, Zara and Zoe. They are now 5 years old, and they inspired us to write this book, Twin Power. It was honestly my husband's idea. We have different fun ways of dealing with them to get them to do what we want them to do and to follow rules and to do things that's needed. And so he came up with Twin Power. So whenever they were in a situation where they needed help with something or couldn't do something by themselves, he would say, use your twin power. And then it became a phrase that was common around the house. And even our family members will use it as well. And he was like, this would be a great idea for a book. And I said, yeah, it really would, especially because when we had twins, there weren't many twin books out at all. Particularly now there's a few more.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly when they were born, there weren't a lot at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, there really should be more books for twins. There are enough twins out there. And then particularly for children that look different than the majority, if you will. Uh,
Yeah.
People that, books that would be able to represent other races, other cultures. We thought that would be important as well.
Definitely.
We took a different spin on it because as Kiyanda mentioned, representation matters, and I think that we benefit from that now because there was definitely more representation for us when we were growing up than even the generation before us.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to take advantage of that, to aspire to be whatever you want to be, and to see people who are doing what you're doing, we really valued what that meant for our twins, to
Right.
be able to see other twins who were depicted in books.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, as my wife mentioned, wanted to make sure that they were being represented. And it actually then opened up the idea to representation for all. So we actually made a conscious decision, to try to make the characters in the book, the children at the very least, a little bit racially ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we did that was because we actually wanted all twins to be able to see themselves in our books, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to what we were seeing for our own kids, which was that you just had, twins, but
Right.
they were very clearly
Well,
one particular group of ethnically or racially.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, being black ourselves, it just kind of made sense to us to be inclusive. So that was something, as I said, that was intentional on our part in how the children were illustrated in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But the book itself, as my wife mentioned, is just really capitalizing on the unique bond that twins have.
Mhm.
They're born together. They tend to live their lives or go through life together. And there's a certain strength that I think that they have in the camaraderie of being together. So there were times where they needed to, move furniture or something like that because they wanted to do something, move the table so that they could put a game down.
Mhm.
And one wasn't strong enough to be able to do it. So again, it was use twin power. And it's just become the mantra in the house. That's what they do whenever they need help. They'll literally call out to the other and say, "Hey, I need twin power. Can you help me?"
Um,
So, we
that's,
started with the first book, Twin Power, and the goal really from the beginning was to make a series. So right now we have two books that are published, and we actually are working on the third to be published, and we actually have a few others that have been written but not yet published.
and I'm curious. So I love the twin power, that mantra that you have. How did it go from that to the idea of a children's book? And then, I mean, where did that idea come from? And then once you had it, because we talk a lot on this channel about, realizing your dreams, making dreams come true. So can you talk a little bit about the process of taking it from an idea to actually having two published books and a series in the works?
So it was interesting. What happened is that, as my wife mentioned, we would read books to our kids every night. That was something that was really important for us, literacy and just imagination. And we had some twin books, but we just really weren't happy with either the storyline or the lack of representation. So it really was just a fleeting thought of, oh, maybe we should write a book, and that's all
Mm.
that happened. And
Literally a
then
thought.
right, right. Really a fleeting thought. And so we're both physicians, and
Right.
we were just, life was just going at, 100 miles a minute. And then it came to a screeching halt once COVID hit. And
Mm.
so, as it turns out, it was actually in 2019. We were on vacation, so we finally had a chance to just kind of be, relaxed and free. We
Mhm.
actually, at that point, we kind of revisited the fleeting thought, and
Mm.
we just started putting words to paper, coming up with the concept. And I remember it was actually in my phone. And to this day, that's actually where our scripts are,
Oh.
the rough drafts. But in any case, we wrote it in our phone while we were on vacation, and we just left it there. We didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know if we could do something with it. But as I said, once life kind of came to a screeching halt in 2020, we found that we had time, and
Right.
it was amazing to be able to have
Perspective.
time, and we started working on that.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, life did not come to a screeching halt for many physicians. But I'm a surgeon and my husband's a gastroenterologist. And so with
Mm.
us doing procedures, many procedures got postponed when the pandemic was at its highest. So for the two of us, we had lighter schedules than what we normally would have.
Right.
Yeah,
Versus physician.
definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, relatively speaking. But yeah, so once we had more time, that's where we actually decided to find an illustrator and see if we could actually do this. And to be honest with you, at least for me, the idea was it would just be nice to have something tangible to be able
Hmm.
to say, hey, we wrote a book, and to be able to share this with our kids, and that was it. So that's kind of all I ever envisioned with it. And so once we had a little more free time in 2020, that's where we put it together. And we reached out to Kiyanda, has her sister and her cousin are in they're in the industry, if you
Public.
will. Her sister, yeah, her sister works for a magazine, and is very familiar with publications. And her cousin actually is a lawyer by training, but does publishing as well, has her own publishing company. But even though they had this background, none of us had done a children's book.
Mm.
So we just kind of reached out to them and said, hey, we had this idea that we thought this is really cute, and we just maybe want to publish one book to put on the shelf. And they're like, you can do more with this.
Mm.
And so it actually became a family project from there. So for us, it was definitely having resources in our own family, which is obviously a great asset. And I
Hmm.
imagine not something that everybody has. But, I think that obviously there are a lot of people out there who are able to do it without those resources.
Hmm.
And fortunately now, I think that the market has changed a little bit to be a
Yeah.
lot more hospitable to independent publishers. So we have just kind of found ourselves in a group of people we never imagined we would be a part of. We we never. I don't think either of us necessarily saw ourselves as being authors, but we very much enjoy it.
Right.
And it was actually very inspiring when we shared the book, the first book, with my sister and my cousin, because they were like, why do you just want to do one book? This is actually good. And we will stand behind you with this. We believe like this could be something.
Mhm.
So they helped us take it to the next step. And even though we had that rough draft of the first book, there were some tweaks that we had to make. My cousin Tasha Troy Gordon, she is the editor as well, and so she's edits our books for us. So we made also a conscious decision to make sure the book was friendly to young readers. So
Mhm.
things like avoiding contractions, like things with apostrophes, making sure we use simple words, but at the same time we did put some more advanced words in there to
Mhm.
help children learn new words. And then she was the inspiration to say, let's add something more and add some sort of activities to the end and comprehensive questions. And that's part of one of my favorite things about the books, because we naturally do it with our children. We'll ask them, so do you remember what this was? Why do you think this happened in a book? And we have that laid out because there are some parents that may not realize the importance of doing that, or don't have the time to remember themselves, but they can just go back to the questions. And then if a child reads the book on their own, a parent can always go to those activities and the comprehension questions and ask them as well, even though they may not have read the book themselves.
Right. And I don't know if you were able to see the comments. You got a really nice one talking about what a great book it is. Um, but I would, such a good concept, making it truly young reader friendly. Yes, that is wonderful that you were so thoughtful about how you were doing it in the language and having those activities. But I have to know, what kind of review did you get from your twins? What did they think about this? Actually, watch the series, did books, are they impressed, or they're just like, oh, that's just what mom and dad do?
One thing that I love, well, Ben can answer the second part because I know what he'll say. But one thing that I really loved is my daughter looked at the book and she said, Simone has my hair. So, especially at that point, we used to put my daughter's hair into ponytails with like little Afro puffs.
Right.
And that's pretty much how Simone's hair is. But again, even though she's racially ambiguous, so she could be Hispanic, she could be, I don't know about Middle Eastern because their hair isn't as curly, but you can see how different cultures can identify. And even though Simone is lighter in complexion, my daughter was still able to identify with her, and that was really great.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I think they definitely liked it. And as a matter of fact, their school actually has some of the books, so
Oh,
they love the fact that they can share in this idea, and that it means something personal to them. They enjoy the books as well. So I would say, but I think it with kids it's just like it just kind of they kind of work on whims.
yeah.
So there have definitely been some days where it's just like, oh, that's just kind of what mommy and daddy do. So
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
but I
they
would say
definitely
overall
were not
they give
wowed
it a
by
thumbs up.
yeah, they definitely were not wowed that specifically mommy and daddy wrote the book. They're like, oh, it's a book, great, we have lots of these. But
Yeah.
they enjoy the book, and they really enjoy the fact that it represented boy girl twins like
Right.
they are.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to just identical twins, or yeah.
Yeah. And we want to create a space, as I said, for twins because we realized that going into it, that was kind of our target audience. What's been nice is that it's really definitely expanded from there, where it just kind of talks more so, I think, about the relationships between close people. And
Mhm.
so this could be, a relationship that applies to friends. This could be a relationship that applies to siblings, but not twins. This could be relationships that applies to cousins, whatever it might be. So that part of it has actually been really nice to be able to see. But since we started from a place of twindom, if you will, we are planning on really kind of, I think, operating off of that in future books. As a matter of fact, in the first book, we actually talk a little bit about the difference between identical twins and fraternal twins, because I think
Mhm.
that's something for twins to be able to understand. And
Right.
even our twins, kind of I think they learned something from that, to really be able to hone in on, oh, yes, we're fraternal twins, and here's what that means. But future books will definitely be incorporating. lots of different cultures and backgrounds, because we really wanted to reflect our society the way that it is, or the way that it should be. And we even have ideas of just kind of talking about multiples, because it goes beyond twins.
Hmm.
So there we were welcomed into a club once the twins are born, that
Hmm.
includes triplets and quadruplets and all of that. So it's a fun, fascinating world.
Nice.
It is.
And, well, I'm curious. So, since both of you are doctors, did either, I mean, this must be kind of a surprise for yourselves to be going in. It seems, at least from to me from the outside, like such a different world. Although I have talked to some, I don't know that I've ever talked to any who were doctors and writing. I think maybe one, but others who were like say in some kind of science field, that they say that actually it's not that different, because to me it would seem like you'd be switching complete like, modes of your
Going the
being.
other brains.
But to say that, how do you find it? Do you feel like you're kind of switching into a completely different mode, or do you see that there are connections with your other work?
At least for me, it does. One, because we don't take care of children. We both take care of adults.
Right.
So it's not like we're in the young world all the time. However, it really is a part of being parents. So as a mom, as a father, I think it's kind of natural. Uh, in a way, you can say it's similar. It's not too far-fetched because in medicine, we often have to give presentations. We've both written articles in the past. So we have that aspect of it. But with those articles, it's very scientific. It is not necessarily creative. It's not geared to a specific audience, if you will, that
Hmm.
is on a completely different wavelength. You have to try to speak to a child. So for me, it is different, but it hits home as a mom.
Hmm.
I would say I would actually take kind of a philosophical spin on it. Doctor actually means teacher. And one of the things that I like about the books is that I feel like we make a conscious effort to teach through the books. The books are very much inspired by our twins. And so, for example, one of the books that we're working on, that I think is going to end up being very helpful for young children, is dealing with the different personality types of being introverted versus extroverted, and the idea that people expect that twins are often the same when they really are not. And so that mirrors our life with our twins. And so as we are dealing with just various things with them, we find ways to be able to put it into the book or the books, in order to not only teach our own kids, but to be able to teach other people. So I think that the teacher hat that both my wife and I wear when we're working with our patients as physicians, definitely I'm finding that we're having an opportunity to be able to do that now as we teach like through these books. And I enjoy it. It's really an outlet uh, that I didn't know I needed. But it's really nice to be able to kind of be creative and intentional at the same time in working with bright young minds
Hmm.
that are, I think that we're just more keenly aware of because of the very ones that live in our home.
Have you found that now that things have started to go kind of back to normal in terms of your schedule, at least I imagine that your schedules are kind of back to what they were pre-pandemic? Has it been hard to kind of maintain uh, the books, not just the books, but I'm sure there's a lot of around it as far as promotion and social media. Is it hard to keep that up, or do you feel like you got into a good rhythm of it that you're able to maintain even if things have gone back to normal?
Definitely more difficult.
Definitely hard. Definitely more
So for
difficult.
example,
It's the marketing part. Yeah.
Right.
we haven't marketed nearly as much as we had hoped by now, and it's just because the four of us, the two of us, my sister and my cousin, we've all been very busy. So haven't been able to focus on that quite as much as we would like. And even the third book, just the other night, Ben asked me, have you had a chance to look at the third one? Because usually what happens is one of us writes it and then the other one adds in some creative flair, some tweaks, some changes. And so this one he started and now I have to go in and add my piece and I haven't had a chance.
I was wondering about that. How does it work with the collaboration? So one of you writes and then the other kind of adds to it?
For
Yeah,
the
I
most
think
part.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it's worked so far.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it really works beautifully because, one might be more, in tune verbally at any given point as far as like putting the words to paper, and then the other one is really working really well conceptually to be able to kind of figure out what does that look like, what kind of
Mhm.
illustration should we put with that. And as I said, we're intentional where we will actually build vocabulary words into each book,
Mm,
and we ask about those later, and we work on context clues so that a child can figure out what that word actually means. There are coloring activities in the back, and they're just lots of different things is that's packed in there. And we tend to work, I think, very well collaboratively to cover all those areas. So it's been an outlet that I didn't know that I needed, and one that is just super nice to be able to figure out just one more thing that my wife and I can actually do together.
right.
So it's been nice. It's been a lot of fun.
It
There
has
have
been
been
a
no
lot of
fight. There have been no fights. There have been
That's
like
great.
it, because you can imagine, like, okay, so how's this really going? It's actually been
yeah.
we continue to gel very well.
That's great.
Because we each have artistic sides to us, I think, but
Mm,
you lose a lot of that when you go through training. So for me, I did a combined bachelor's and med school program. So that was 7 years altogether. And then surgical residency, which was another 5 years, and then another year of fellowship. For my husband, it was very similar. He did the traditional route, 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency in internal medicine, then 3 years fellowship in GI, and then a further fellowship. So you're inundated in all of this and working a lot during this time. So a lot of your passions tend to go to the wayside. For people who are able to keep it up while they're in training, I don't know how they do it. God bless them. But so I felt like I lost a lot of that. I think my husband would agree that he lost a lot of that during that time. So this has given us, an like he said, an outlet that we didn't know we needed or that we missed.
hmm
And yet one more thing to try to get done in addition to work, in addition to taking care of the kids, in addition to trying to take care of yourself and doing self-care. But it's been a fun addition, and I would argue that it is kind of self-care because it's nice to do something different outside of what you do every day.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of refreshing or rejuvenating in its own way, I think. Yeah. Oh,
Exactly.
that's wonderful. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the time because I don't want to take too much of your time. Before we wrap up, could you give us a preview of what the third book is going to be about? I don't know how much you want to.
Yeah. So, I alluded to it a little bit, but to suffice it to say that what we're kind of working on is, as I said, different personalities, and trying to dispel some of the myths of, again, twins being the same. So as much as we definitely highlight twindom and the unique bond that they have to be able to do things together, we also want to take an opportunity to be able to highlight individuality. And so I think that actually comes out a little bit in this particular book of their individual personalities, and how both of those things or both of those personalities can still work out well. And they even use their differences to still help to build each other up. And that's, again, it definitely is, it parallels with our own kids because our kids are very different in their personalities as far as being outgoing, versus being a little bit more introverted. And we
Mhm.
wanted to create a space for that because we ran into a point where those differences, we really needed to be able to address, I think, a little bit more formally. And so it kind of opened up the idea for this would probably be a great book because I'm sure that parents deal with this, whether they have, twins or not. But I'm sure they deal with this when you have more than one child of
Right.
having to take different approaches. So that's what we're hoping to be able to highlight in the next book.
And do you have an idea of when we might be able to see that?
We're hoping that it will be available in the spring. That was the idea. It just, yeah, it's written, and we have a great illustrator that we found on Upwork. He's actually in Hungary, but so there's a time difference that ends up being, interesting as far as communicating. But we hope to be able to keep him because it just obviously helps with the consistency of the books. So he works quickly. Once we get it to him, then it'll just be a matter of the editing process. But we're looking forward to getting another one out there.
Well, we will look forward to that also. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It was really fun talking with you. And for anybody watching, if you haven't checked it out, please go visit Twin Power Books. They're really wonderful books. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for
Absolutely. Thank
having
you for
us.
having us. Yes.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. And if you joined us late, this will be up on Instagram in a few minutes and on YouTube later today. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.